Hi, this is Michael James Bigham, CEO, KNCN Technologies. I wanted to share with you guys my personal experiences. I know I made a previous video regarding this, but I want to let you guys know that I did actually get diagnosed with having fibromyalgia on top of my autism. I'm on a medication now called Cymbalta, which I just took it this morning. I'm able to think a little better, a little more clear. Sometimes I have a sense of recall issue, but it slows me down to the point where I'm doing much better. I'm a little more patient with people, getting my point across, not so intense with my explanation. So I wanted to also let you guys know, if you wanted to look up the medication called Cymbalta, and you want to know what fibromyalgia is, you need to be able to search the internet. It's not a mental illness. They basically had to discontinue my psychiatric medications. I still had a prescription for it. I just wasn't taking the Risperdal Consta for a long period of time, ever since the 16th of last month. I noticed some irritability issues, a little bit impatience and intolerance with people. So I agreed to try the Cymbalta, and it's not necessarily going to cause confusion or impairment of judgment or all the basic issues that criminals normally have on the medication. No stereotypic reactions, no stereotypic responses. But I wanted to explain to you guys a little bit about my family. See, I have a family in Oregon. I have an Aunt Kathy is her name. Her name is Aunt Kathy. Well, she told me that she has this disorder. At first, it was lupus that I thought, but then they came back and it was a negative result. So I asked my Aunt Kathy again about what else she has, and she said, well, she has fibromyalgia. And so I noticed that maybe the autism and the irritability associated with that, and the situation where I have intolerance for people that just don't get what I'm saying, and they're not as thorough with understanding another person's experiences. So I got so frustrated with people. I had a little bit of an outrage with people a few times. So I went ahead and just tried the Cymbalta, and it does work. It slows down a little bit, but not to the point where I'm going to have deferments in my thinking like the psych drugs. So so I'm not on any mental health medications. Don't take anything. And fibromyalgia and autism, I mean, these two things can be the main reason why people have behavioral issues. So there is another route to go if you don't want to take the Cymbalta. You have to go to a neurologist and get tested according to what they suggest or recommend you should do about it if you don't want to be on the medication. But it's not an antipsychotic. It's not a neuroleptic. It's not one of those types of medications. What it is that you can experience some depression, you can experience some anxiety and stress, and you have a hard time dealing with that. What ends up being is that your body tends to be wore out. You get overly extensive, overly expressive, and your body tends to be wore out very easily. What it does is it affects the muscles. So what your body is experiencing, you're going to be irritable, and you just can't handle the stress of your environment. So you go on and on about these issues. You just want to be able to let other people know the truth. And when people don't give you credit for you telling the truth, and their mind is different because they think differently and believe differently, you can't handle that stress because you know you're telling the truth. And when you are, you tend to think the person is being very arrogant and not caring. So you lose trust in them. But I wanted to give you guys my writings, the reason for why I have something against the government, mental health, quote unquote, and the reason for why I have something against the pharmaceutical companies. I wrote all this stuff when I wasn't processing in a bad way as far as the Risperidone Consta. And usually when I would take the Risperidone Consta, I would have really bad deferments, a sense of sedation. In 3 to 4 days, I just had no desire, no motivation. All my interests seemed to be distant from my understanding and my ability to pursue those things that I had interest in. It just wasn't there. But normally after that, I started to have more clarity. But now that I'm able to have clarity without the sedative psychoactive effects, I think I could better help you guys understand the reasons for why I feel you guys should support me, and why you should be a part of my Supreme Court case in Colorado. I want you guys to be a part of it, and that's really where I'm coming from. I want you guys to be able to be a part of taking the system to trial, to do something about it. Now, violence is not necessarily the reason. It's not necessarily the answer. I don't want people going that route. What I want them to do is take action the appropriate way. And that's why I'm telling you guys this is so important. And I'm going to read to you my experiences. These are a cluster of online articles as I have added my own personal experiences to refine the content. So here we go. All right. These topics are a cluster of online articles as I added my own personal experiences to refine the content. Topic number 1, emotional spellbinding, is commonly described as knowing how you feel about something in your head but can't find it in your heart. It also may feel like you don't care about anything or anyone anymore. In a sense, you have no emotions about anything or anyone, or even things you should or used to have interest in. In this case, criminal characteristics overtake the personality of the individual, and because they lose the ability to care about the consequences of their actions, they stop caring about how their actions affect them and others around them. The psychoactive properties also can create a confused or agitated or non-tolerant state, driving emotional instability and repetitive actions by the simple effect of sedation. This control can drive a negative response by altering the natural state of consciousness, homeostasis, into a state of heterostasis. Even though they define heterostasis as a stable if dynamic distribution of conscious states or conscious behaviors, in many cases it is all determined on individual circumstances of chemistry and sensory input and output of high levels or low levels of stimulation. In many ways, the sedative effect can disrupt the proper placement or organizing of word structure. By doing so, the emotional responses are affected, not in a good way. This can disrupt the filtering of thought by creating cognitive displacement. If your thoughts or words are out of place, so will your emotions be. If you cannot find positive words to replace the bad, can you find a positive emotion to replace the bad one? No. Because of sedation, the mind is confused. Its filtering has become disrupted. So if the emotion is controlled, the thoughts of the person are too. This is where controlling your own choices naturally becomes non-existent. So who is in control of whose choices? In this case, who should take ownership of those choices? Surely not the person who is under involuntary medications. Surely the one compelling the person or even the manufacturer. They should equally be held responsible, don't you think? Because thought and emotion have the same purpose, and dynamic distribution and focus are the natural controlling of the choice of words and the choice of emotion all at the same time. Focus is the control of someone's responses. If you sedate someone, you confuse this process, and by doing so, the reaction of emotion holds its focus control. In some cases, the meaning of homeostasis or heterostasis can be reversed depending on the true state of consciousness someone is in. Dynamic distribution is important because it can filter your thoughts or emotions. Then, by acknowledging a match by comparison, the choice to respond becomes acknowledged. With the medication, the confusion of sedation disrupts this process, so the mind cannot compare. If the mind cannot compare the bad thoughts with the good, then determine a consequence for both, and have the ability to discern the differences between the two, the mind is forced to choose only one response. In my case, I could only choose the bad one. With sedation, you confuse the rational side of reason. If you cannot reason with yourself, what makes you think you can reason with others? So can you change the choices of what overpowers you by having the control to choose? No, because this control also depletes the desire for motivation, therefore depleting your will to choose. The dynamic distribution holds its position and focus, locking on to an alternate uncontrollable transition. This is evident by word structure and an inability to place words with their meaning. The sedative effect causes confusion in the ability for proper dynamic distribution. There can be an issue in proper evaluation, not just with the beliefs of the evaluator, but with the diagnostic tools of measurements used in diagnosing. Low or high levels can be changed simply by an environmental change. More or less acceptance or disapproval can conclude a response. Both can alter the responses of the person. But the more the responses of others become accepting on both sides, the easier it becomes for accepting the responses of the recipients. You cannot simply put a label on outward behaviors of body language. The thoughts of the person may be processing the input of information in both a positive and negative way all at once. An outward body language may not tell the whole story. The dependence on this as a form of diagnostics can never be dependent on to conclude a definition in acting on the thoughts of the individual. Their words alone shouldn't define a person's state of conscious understanding. Neither action, because everyone is different. But what makes us the same is the option to choose. Depending on how the brain is wired to learn or process information, internal, external, is where logical or illogical reasoning can come from. This is where you can define the differences in beliefs. But even then, the effects of social criticism can rewire the mind to find a different belief to trust in. This is all dependent on the doubts or acknowledgments of the person receiving knowledge, because of social acceptance or disapproval in one's belief. If they are not being acknowledged, they can feel shattered. This changes the emotional state, therefore changing conscious states. Topic number 2, emotional instability. Can be defined as having a concurrent transition of emotional states and moderate emotional resilience to environmental influences or cues. Emotional instability occurs when someone reacts with intense emotion to low or moderate external cues. Topic number 3, how stimulants affect the brain and behavior. Psychological effects, high doses, may result in restlessness, agitation. Excessive doses may produce stereotypic behaviors, repetitive and automatic acts. Chronic psychological effects of stimulant use include various psychological disorders such as psychosis, paranoia, and suicidal tendencies. These are the psychoactive effects that drugs produce and the disadvantages of the properties of the drugs themselves. Topic number 4, the psychoactive effects of sedation. Impaired cognition, impaired judgment, impaired self-awareness, emotional blunting, activation, feelings of arousal, insomnia, agitation, emotional instability, reduced libido. This I did not experience. Topic number 5, the psychoactive effects of psychiatric medication by J. Moncroft, 2013, cited 42, November 18th, 2013. For example, the particular quality of physical, mental, and emotional reaction produced by neuroleptic or antipsychotic drugs was well recognized in the 1950s to dampen intense psychotic thoughts and experiences and other states of agitation and arousal without simply putting the patient to sleep. This happened to me and still does after I get my shot. But the sedative effects of this wear off after 3 to 4 days and I regain control of my state of arousal. Now, I told you guys I'm no longer taking those drugs, so it's no longer a problem. I find my focus and attention is off what can cause arousal and on the topics of my passions and interest in technology, art, autism, psychology, behavior theory, neuroscience, creative problem solving, theories, a creative view for a permanent resolution and a global solution, in ending poverty through cryptocurrency, mathematics, listening to inspirational music, helping others heal their wounds by acceptance and through letting my story empower their lives. With my experiences and not being sedated, I can give others new insights into what could help them heal. When we are sedated, we are in limbo with our pain, and what remains in limbo cannot be healed. But with the truth of experience and the love of others, we can find strength to let go and let God. It has taken me a while to understand that I needed to surrender to God, and this meant acknowledging that I couldn't trust or rely on my own understanding to overcome my own problems. In many ways, I was lost in the thoughts of the unknown. This led me to lose hope when I didn't get what I needed from others. I didn't have all the answers to life's most important questions. I couldn't rely on myself to resolve them when I was unsure what the outcome was going to become. I now know that none of us have the answers, only God. What made me aware of the need to surrender was that I needed God to allow roadblocks to appear and prevent me from doing things my way. I needed His discipline out of love and understanding. I was questioning if God understood my concerns rather than trusting Him that He did. I knew that He did, but wouldn't allow myself to believe. I was blinded by the lack of trust in others and the dependence of others. I was troubled that I wasn't getting my needs met, and the answers to what I knew the truth is were not being acknowledged by others. I finally acknowledged that the real problem was not the decisions of others to deny my appeal, but the real issue was me, and if I was trusting God to resolve my concerns or relying on my own and others' understanding. I needed to surrender to God because He had the answers. I knew that where I could not overcome my troubles, doubts, fears, worries, and disappointments in others, I still could find hope in Him. This surrender allowed me to find peace. I don't question why, but how and when. I needed to surrender, and by doing so, I began to believe and have faith. I began to trust. I have chosen to accept that I will never know the outcome of my concerns without letting God reveal them in His timing. And I cannot predict whether others will believe what I am saying. I just needed to surrender to God's plan. I just needed to believe. My mind wanders from these topics when sedated, and I tend to lose interest very easily in what keeps me confident in myself, motivated, and encouraged to meet my goals. While these things give me a healthy sense of pleasure, the change in focus and altered states change my focus of pleasure to one of sexual in nature. Because the effects of having no self-control over the power of the drug, it causes me to act on impulse. Because of my vivid imagination and perceptual reasoning score of 120, my internal and external focus is locked on to sexual interests. Also because my disability is sensory-based and my senses play a role in my arousal. Arousal is more sensory-based, and chemicals like these drugs can play a role in the type of control or pleasure you choose to respond to. In many ways, I had no control. The medications did. What I have been able to understand about the true purpose of medicating someone is that it is not to help allow the individual to have better control themselves, but to allow others to control the one taking them. Fear of violence has overtaken the one judging the person, so the one doing the judging compels the offended to believe they have no right to feel offended, as if they are the real concern. The real issue is that the one doing the judging has the same fears of being misunderstood and doesn't understand why they can't control the situation. So instead of acknowledging the choices they've made to offend the person and apologizing for how they've offended them, they compel them into taking something that allows them to control the situation and person's behavior. This is where neither side can take responsibility for how they've responded. It all starts with the first offense by not acknowledging who's wrong when both are, simply by not caring about them in a loving manner. Then the force of controlling by psychological manipulation and overpowering them by physical force through the one in fear continues to make evident that nothing can change the result. What now results in the force of injection overpowers the option that love provides to correct the course in changing the outcome, by making them dependent on them, as if they are more capable to make better decisions in how they respond. The issue is trust and belief. We cannot control others by force and rely on this to help improve their lives. The only way we can help them is to acknowledge our own responses, and by doing so, in time they respond differently. This can help because we are teaching them by example. If we choose not to take ownership of this, we will also teach them to do so. We cannot rely on fear, hypocrisy, or the hypocritical ideologies of others and trust that they are more able to control their behaviors if they are ignoring that they have the same issues. Where we are trusting in fear of being hurt, so are they. Choosing love over fear is the best way to conquer our concerns. Topic number 6, spellbinding, an adjective and verb. Holding one's attention completely as though by magic, fascinating. Hold the complete attention of someone as though magic, fascinate. To lose focus and regain focus is very important for making good choices. Where you are able to have bad thoughts and lose focus to acquire good ones, the control of the drug can hold your attention on only one type of pleasurable influence, then block the other by the sedative effect of confusing the transmitters and the individual. Simply put, you lose the ability to choose. With this verb or adjective, you may use either to describe the consequences of the effects of both spellbinding or spellbind, and add each cluster of psychoactive effects to understand what has occurred in my case that landed me in prison. These good thoughts get better over time as we are able to learn from the consequences of our past responses. Spellbinding causes us to focus more on ourselves, and through the senses we experience these two sets of common pleasures. We cannot simply correct our responses because we are under the control of a chemical substance, and this is not our fault. In many cases, we are involuntarily compelled into taking them. Topic number 7, learning by self-awareness and confidence. For example, I was unable to use my vivid thinking to acquire mathematical or rhythmic understanding. In school, I was so vividly blocked that I became agitated and aroused at the same time. My vivid understanding gives me creative perspectives and views on topics that interest me and are skill-oriented. The lithium I used to take restricted the options I had in word structure, which restricted my positive responses. Having a clear thought structure is very important for choosing an option and how you respond. Because having positive or negative thoughts are optional in human nature. And to restrict one type and control the other is to make the other repetitive. So the control of the drug gives no option in choosing how you respond. I had no confidence in myself. My ability to encourage myself, despite the doubts of others, was greatly affected because of an altered thought structure. What intended interest I had or could have had became unreachable to grasp or understand. I could not become recognized by others as able, capable, or rational because of restricting the choice of thoughts I would have had that gave me intelligent, creative pleasure or excitement in knowing I was smart. This led me to think and feel that I had nothing to offer others, and they pushed me away and made fun of me. I had no friends. This affected my identity. This led to self-esteem issues and affected my relationships with others. But this ability I possess now gives me confidence for my future. Where I was told by everyone who treated me that I was retarded, but I chose not to listen to their lies. I knew it was the psychoactive effects of the drugs. Preventing a process of having an epiphany, a side effect of psychoactive drugs. Epiphany, meaning, in the moment an epiphany occurs, our heart is in coherence. It means we are in alignment with a universal truth that passes through our heart, which then sends a signal to our brain and results in an immediate recognition that what we know or see or understand has deep meaning for us. In my life, this pertains to me and my experiences. These are a cluster of my own epiphanies as I compare them to my experiences. All drugs that have brain-altering effects can stop this occurrence from happening. What we know becomes foolish to the one that doesn't have the same epiphany at the same moment. What may seem hard to grasp becomes a false reality for the other person. This judgment of the one who has had this occurrence has become a force of fear for the one doing the judging. Sad to see they think they have to force involuntary medications on them when this epiphany is really truth. We all have different, but sometimes the same perception of what reality, truth is. What can make us different is the choices we have and what we choose to trust as the truth. Our world has much deception in it, and it can be difficult to discern false from truth. What we acknowledge as truth, many times we find ourselves finding out for ourselves without being medicated that we have been tricked or lied to. This itself makes it hard to trust because we are driven by courses of false ideologies that others have persuaded us to believe. Then we are misunderstood by others that don't share the same as who we've chosen to believe.
This causes us to lose trust in others. What makes this discernment we naturally respond with our best hope for creating our own identity is the fact that not one of us has the right to judge anyone's reality. We all as human beings have the right to our will and the right to not be forced into a path we wouldn't choose for ourselves. When we cannot choose for ourselves, we feel violated. This path mental health has chosen for us is forced on us and has become an unawareness of consequence of others' intentions by sedation. A chemical force of overpowering the mind and the will that drives it to choose. Helplessness takes over and we bind to their will. It is a constitutional right for all of humanity to choose for themselves what is reality. In many ways, we all are the same. This forced involuntary solution is criminal in nature, and we all deserve the right to choose. Creating chemical slavery. Cautiousness is not paranoia, but mental health will use this to create chemical slaves for dependence. Let me ask you, is chemical slavery any different than physical slavery? If we have created laws that make slavery a crime, can we not apply the same laws of ideology of the minds of the ones who created those laws to chemical slavery? Until we have the ability not being compelled into a sense of false identity, we cannot make up our own mind about what is truth or false. Chemical incompetence, patience, and awareness of being slaves. The medications prescribed by mental health has woven many into an incoherent state of consciousness. The one doing the judging does not believe the person. But when they are compelled into taking the medication, it forces them into a truthful and naive dependence. They are chemically controlled into having someone choose for them. Because of sedation, their mind is unaware that they can depend on themselves and ability to make good choices. The lack of trust of others shouldn't force a person to choose trusting in self-ability over the acceptance or approval of others. To me, respect is not true approval. When you have to change what makes you who you are to receive its benefits. To me, if I want love where I desire it, I will move on to someone who will give it to me in return, then receive it by not letting go of what makes me me. I can now tell the differences between the two. This requires discernment. When I lose clarity because of sedation, I have a hard time discerning when I should be cautious of others. I am too trusting, and this can lead to disappointments. The chemically dependent become impulsive with reliance, so this force of control can cause difficulty in communication by confusing the reality of the person's understanding. What would have made them confident in their belief of the truth they trust in has led them to depend on someone else's. This can lead to being easily misled or persuaded into criminal acts by this dependence on others. This can cause confusion for the criminal justice employees who just don't understand why they chose to commit the act. For the accused, they end up feeling helpless and sad that no one can relate or has interest in their truthfulness. Their honesty turns into compulsive lying because it's all they have in not continuing to be misunderstood. This can affect communication between others and cause anger or agitation because of the loss of clarity. They now have to be dependent on themselves to get out of the mess they're in. But the drugs are forcing a change in personality and outward body language and causing a controlled or altered change in the choice of response. So it is natural for the officer to get mixed messages. In many ways, if the defendant is confused and cannot acknowledge self-awareness, but the official can, the defendant can be persuaded or chemically confused by a force of control. What one person may understand as truth, the other may not. We all have different views or opinions. We need to trust the opinions of others because theirs could change the world for the better. We all need each other for the supporting of those views. Look what Einstein accomplished, or even Tesla. Many thought they were nuts, but look at what their accomplishments have given us. For me, I just need help by being supported in my vision for my dreams, where before others saw me as incapable. For me, I don't see myself for what I lack, for what the lack of what I know, but what I can, and not for the lack of focus on interests of others, but what interests me. Some things others like, I like. Despite the doubts of others, they persevered and changed the world through creativity, imagination, clarity, truth, and resilience. I have the same qualities, so what makes you think I am any less capable? Maybe you are just acknowledging the opinions of others rather than listening to your conscience. I don't know. I can't read minds. But what I know, I have experienced. And through those experiences, I've gained wisdom and knowledge. I have learned that experience is the best teacher, and what you cannot teach someone. Experience gives guidance, and epiphanies give creative knowledge. Through this, I've learned to teach myself, and through this, I've become capable. In all account, all our dreams have a purpose. We all have a purpose and deserve to be supported for them. What is foolishness to me? To me, it is foolish to create a logo outside your business that reads Aurora Mental Health, live life to the fullest. To someone who is not naive because of acknowledging the reality of their experiences, I can say that this sign is demeaning. From this logo, I understand it is just a created invitation into a corrupt, deceptive, and misleading practice. In itself, this logo is all you need to define what is misleading. Understanding the lies of false realities. No matter how ridiculous or crazy they may be, many highly intelligent people in history were told they were. But when their creativity had been proven factual, they were able to be recognized. This led to a promising future. My hopes. I have dreams and ideologies through having numerous epiphanies. This false representation of my epiphanies prevented me from meeting my goals. In many ways, I am not the only one in existence that has ever needed assistance in learning. And despite my developmental delays, I am just as bright as the next person. But I require the help of others. I am asking for guidance from others, but I am also asking for the truth of what I know to be trusted by others. I am also asking for others to stop ignoring these truths, because I am not the only one who has warned others of such things. Many psychologists have done the same. So have drug researchers, not just in America, but also as a combined advocating group for multiple countries. I understand that others have doubts about my understanding because of my lack of credentials. But my experiences give you what you already expect of me in being able to explain the truth. I may not have a certificate on paper, but I possess one in my heart. For example, if Bill Gates of Microsoft could shock the world, quit school, run a leading company, and do it all without a college degree, the future looks bright for all of us. What makes you think my dreams will never happen for me? I just need an opportunity, just like so many do. As much as I know I lack some capabilities, I am haunted by current and past forces of action by mental health. An understanding of a state of false reality can be mistaken for an epiphany. This has happened to me. Why I write, and this is very important. I want to help you understand why this case is so important to me. First, I will give you some history that will remind you of a time of suffering and lead you toward a path of awareness that many Americans have forgotten about. Do any of you know the real story behind Hitler? What he did to the Jewish people? And I'm going to stop there because my previous video explains that. And I am going to move down to one last page before I finish this. And I want to help you understand the change that I've made. The change that God has given me through his love. And I want to help you understand my diagnosis. First, I will start here. Bible quote, I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. To me, this means I was lost because of living in fear's lies. This led me to being blinded because I chose to listen and acknowledge its wavering immoralities, which led me to lose the ability to recognize the healing power of love. Love overpowered these fears, and because I chose to acknowledge I chose to fight for its healing power. This became a recurring epiphany when times became rough. In moments where I was questioned or challenged by others for my truthfulness, I took the time to step back and acknowledge God's voice. This led me to become reassured of the truth. So what could have led to becoming blinded and lost all over again only led to confidence and empowerment. This is because I recognized how important love is. Because of how I recognized how I was changing my overall attitude toward life, people, and myself. When I recognized that I was forgiven, I recognized I was loved. This gave me the desire to be tolerant of others, which then led to being able to love others. And I became more understanding of their pains and beliefs. I recognized I was no different because I realized where they are, I was. But I couldn't have epiphany unless I could understand, or unless I could surrender to love. So I couldn't have an epiphany unless I understand it, unless I surrendered to love. When I did, I realized that love wasn't compelling a change through manipulation, but allowing me to have control in choosing to allow it to heal my brokenness. All right. I recognized how important others were to God, and my desire to help them heal overpowered the fears of rejection and being hurt all over again. I chose to love because love changed me. Love opened my eyes and gave me confidence. This is why I am not afraid of the outcome of my choice to take my case to the Supreme Court. Because love gave me hope and love helped me understand what has occurred in my case. This led me to acknowledge that if this has happened to me, so it has happened to everyone else on these drugs. I am doing this because of love and the power it has to change your views. I am not judging anyone. We all make mistakes. I am choosing to give others hope. Will you allow hope and love to drive a force of change? This is what I am asking. I am no longer on psychiatric medications and found out that my condition is medical and neurological in nature. I have 3 conditions pertaining to family history: high functioning autism, pre-diabetes, and fibromyalgia, which I need to change that diagnosis on the bottom from lupus to fibromyalgia. Okay. So, that means I need to change the other part too. Alright, so that is pretty much the end of it. That's all I'm going to read for now because I got to shorten this video. So I wanted to let you guys know my personal experiences and the reasons for why I need your help. The reasons for why you guys could be a part of this too. And the evidence that I had on my previous videos regarding the government in that book that has all his formulas in it, you can use that against the government. The Constitution says we have freedom of choice. The desire and motivation should be there to be able to make our own choices. What do you think they're doing to you? They are literally chemically controlling you, and they don't even have to do it through technology at this point. And they're literally coming at all these companies saying, what are you going to do about privacy? What are you going to do about people's control? Giving them control. They're not giving you control. They're not giving many Americans control of their own choices because they're affecting people through dynamic distribution. They're affecting them. It disrupts the process. You can only lean on one type of thought and emotion. You can't be driven to compare the consequences on both sides to be able to discern which one you're going to choose from. And if you choose a bad one, yeah, you make a mistake, but you learn from that because you recognize and you're aware of the consequence, and you don't want to go back to that consequence. So you choose a positive response and you get a positive result, and that through that discernment and self-awareness, you're able to begin to make good decisions. You're able not to go back to those same old choices. We all have that ability, but being suppressed by these drugs, repetitive and automatic acts, stereotypic behaviors, and you wonder why we have so much difficulty in the criminal justice system. All these criminals doing things. I believe they should release every single person back into society. Doesn't matter the conviction, doesn't matter misdemeanor, doesn't matter felony. And then give them option. Give them the option back to have all their rights back. Because in many ways, it's up to the person to choose what path they take. Not the criminal justice system, not the government. Because the Constitution declares that. We all have the option to choose. We make a mistake, we get back out. We can't be on these drugs. We can't be on illegal drugs, illegal substances. We can't be on even the ones that have been approved by the FDA, because basically in the same sense, they're the same. They're the same psychoactive properties. They're the same abilities that affect dynamic distribution. They all affect dynamic distribution. All of them. Doesn't matter what it is. So it's up to you. Fight the government. Get your family out of jail. Get your family out of prison. Get your family loosed out of the system. Besides, the Bible tells us that Jesus, he helps us get out of prison. He is the one who opens up those bars for us. And a lot of it's done by force. It's force. And the coronavirus is one of those reasons that God is using to get people out of prison and out of jail, and for the government and the states to release them. It's one more thing you can use to help me and to help yourself. So this is Michael James Bigham, CEO, KNCN Technologies. You all have a wonderful day. And God bless you. Bye-bye.